Okay, we're going to, please God, may Hashem give Arthur full refuah shalema. Arthur, read the Mishnah.
Okay. If one stole a lamb from a flock and returned it without notifying the owner, and it subsequently died or was stolen, the thief is responsible for it. If the owner was not aware of the theft or its return, and he counted the flock and found that it was complete, the thief is not liable for any future mishap.
Beautiful, beautiful.
You told me to read.
No, it's just beautiful, mate. Very, very happy. All right. So, what's this thing that the thief acquired the lamb? We know that you never get rewarded for thievery. So when we learned with Rav Eliezer, the concept of acquire means you require the responsibility, that you have to be financial responsibility for replacing it if anything should happen to that animal. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean that you get to acquire and keep the proceeds without any benefit. All right, so let me just tell you how it actually rolls itself out. Now, we are talking about a case. There are 4 Amorite rulings according to this Mishnah. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the Mishnah, I think, and keep it on the screen so that you guys can just have an awareness when I give you the 4 opinions. Okay. So we're talking about 2 major concepts here. Is what is your level of responsibility as a thief? If the original owner was not aware of the theft or its return, that's one level of responsibility. And if he counted the flock and found that it was complete, we want to know, is there liability for a future mishap? So there are 4 Amorite teachings. I'll go through them with you. The first main teaching is that of Rav. And what these things do is they constitute the proper return of a stolen article, which exempts the thief from paying for any harm that it might subsequently suffer. So if, for example, the sheep afterwards gets mauled by a wolf, but it has been returned, there has to be a certain procedure of returning the animal so that it remains the original owner's responsibility, not the thief upon its return. So each of those different Amorite rulings require a different interpretation of our Mishnah. Let me go through it with you. The first opinion is Rav, R-A-V. And he said if the article was stolen with the owner's awareness, its return requires awareness, measure for measure. So in other words, the thief must tell the owner that the article has been returned if the owner is aware that it's gone missing. If it was stolen without the owner's awareness, subsequently, when the owner counts his sheep, after the article has been returned, it exempts the sheep from liability because all is well and good for the owner that it seems that all the animals are intact. And according to this approach, when the Mishnah states, and he counted the flock and found that it was complete, the thief is exempt, it refers to the Mishnah's latter clause, which means the second clause, if the owner was not aware of the theft, then in that instance, the owner counting the flock exempts the thief from liability, okay? In the first case, whenever the owner is aware, the only way you can remedy it as a thief is giving the owner awareness of its return. And counting is inadequate. That's according to Rashi. Very, very straightforward. Okay. So, Gavin, do you want to tell me what Rav's opinion is, bottom line?
No, not today. I twisted my neck. I'm in such agony. I can't. I'm barely coping.
Okay.
Not today. Off day for me. Sorry.
What's Rav's opinion? Kevin gets a headset because he's on a bus.
I'm barely functioning. Anybody else? Yeah, Kevin doesn't. Arthur's in the.
All right. So, guys, I'm sorry. I just want to repeat it because we've got Rav, we've got Shmuel, we've got Rav Yochanan and Rav Chisda. And this is an Amorite dispute. If you don't get this right, you're not going to get the Tanaic dispute right at all. This is the simple part. It's going to get very complicated. All right. So, guys, listen carefully. What is the point of these four opinions? Very straightforward. So, these four Amoraic rulings constitutes the proper return of a stolen article, which exempts the thief from paying for any harm that it might subsequently suffer, according to the Mishnah. So each of the four Amoraic rulings discuss a different interpretation of our Mishnah. In other words, a thief wants to make good, and he wants to make a return. What's considered a legitimate return? That if anything happens to the animal, subsequently, what we mean by subsequently after is after it has been returned, the thief is off the hook for liability, legally. Okay? So Rav's position is a measure for measure approach, meaning if the article was stolen with the owner's awareness. Now, it doesn't have to be a sheep. We're going to learn that the tonight dispute is both with an inanimate object, like if money was stolen, or an animate living creature, where a sheep was stolen. And it does have slightly different consequences. But Rav's approach is this measure for measure, that if the article was stolen with the owner's awareness. Now, what do we mean the owner was aware? There's three ways that an owner can become aware. Number one, he sees it, but he's too scared to accost the robber or thief in case he gets himself smashed open. The second one is when he does accounting in the beginning, he's aware that a sheep is missing. That's a second type of awareness through stock take. A third type of awareness is there are witnesses that come to him and say, some person left with your animal, and we didn't want to accost him because, no disrespect, quite frankly, we don't want to lose our lives or put our physical safety in jeopardy to accost the thief or the robber in case he's armed. So those are the three ways that the owner can become aware. Okay, third party, witnessing it himself or stock taking. That's how I can become aware, very straightforward. So Rav is saying when the owner is aware, the thief has to, when he brings it back, tell the owner that the article has been returned, measure for measure. If the thief is at a position where the owner has no awareness as to whether it's been stolen, say a guy has 400 sheep, and it was taken in the middle of the night, and generally there's going to be no witnesses because it's 3 a.m., and there's so many animals, there's not a state of awareness. In that case, when the stock take occurs in the beginning of each month, and that animal has been returned anonymously, in that particular case, the thief has fulfilled his obligation according to Rav, because when they do stock take in the beginning of the month, the animal had been returned, and therefore that exempts the owner, providing the stock take has been self-corrected, providing the owner has no awareness. Very straightforward. That's Rav's opinion. So again, Rav, how do you remember Rav? If the owner's aware, the thief has to make the owner aware upon the animal or money's return. If the owner is not aware, then the thief just has to return the article by the time stock take transpires or money is counted. Okay? That's as straightforward as it gets. How can the owner become aware? Through a third party witnessing, through witnessing himself but being too scared to accost the thief, or by stock take, where he sees the animals missing. Very straightforward. That's right. Let's go to the next opinion. There's a dissenting view from Shmuel. Now, you always have Rav and Shmuel. And do you get what I'm saying? And you have Abaya and Rava. These are contradicting opinions. They're often on opposite end of the spectrum. You've got Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. So whenever you have Rav, we'll hear Shmuel's opinion, and it's always dissenting, meaning contradictory to Rav's. So Rav is saying whether the article was stolen with the owner's awareness or without his awareness, his counting of the possession exempts the thief from liability. So all Shmuel is saying is that it doesn't matter whether the owner is aware or unaware. At the point where he does stock take for the animals or counts his money, if the article is present and the stock take doesn't show any anomaly of theft, This exempts the thief's liability from a legal perspective. And according to this approach, when the Mishnah states, and he counted the flock and found it was complete, the thief is exempt, what is it going to refer to? It's going to refer to the entire Mishnah. So what are we saying? It refers to both the first clause, where the owner knew of the theft, and the second clause, where the owner did not know of the theft. Okay, very straightforward. So awareness doesn't come into it according to Shmuel's opinion, whereas Rav it does. Now, there's a third opinion, and that of Rav Yochanan. Very straightforward. Now, guys, I'm not adding a million commentaries to this opinion, any of these opinions. Why? Because if you've got 4 opinions solid, we can now go through the Tanaic opinion of what these were based. Now, the Tanas always occurred in time history patterns before the Amoraim. The Amoraim were many, many generations later, and any Amorite dispute comes from a Tanaic dispute often. So what's this third opinion by Rav Yochanan? Pretty straightforward. If the article was stolen with the owner's awareness, the owner's aware, his counting of his possessions exempts the thief from liability. In other words, he is aware money is missing. If when, again, he does stock take of his cellar or golden coins or whatever, and the money writes itself, like you, for example, suspect a Jewish domestic worker of stealing your money, and you check, and you say to the whole household, guys, money's missing, I'm not going to prosecute or smash any of you guys or try and put you under a polygraph lie detection test. I just want the money returned. I'm going to check in a week's time. And you come back and the money's intact. The thief is exempt from liability. Okay, that's when there was the owner's awareness, according to Rav Yochanan. If the money or the sheep was stolen without the owner's awareness, even counting is not necessary. Now, this is why. Because according to Rav Yochanan's approach, when the Mishnah states, and he counted the flock and he found that it was complete, the thief is exempt, it's talking about the first clause, where basically the owner knew that one of the animals was missing or his money was missing. So at that point, the only way to remedy is to return it so that a stock take can be done. And then when the owner does the stock take, the rectification of the right amount or the correct counting of the sheep will make the owner aware it has been returned by virtue of the stock take. Okay? If the owner is not aware, the owner doesn't even have to do a stock take, according to Rav Yochanan. Why? Well, very simple. If he doesn't know it's missing and the animal's returned, it's returned. What difference does it make? It's there. Straightforward, Arth? Not so difficult. Okay, good. Now, there's the last opinion. Now, this is a little trickier, but when you understand the logic, it's quite simple. Rav Chisda said, if the article was stolen with the owner's awareness, his counting of his possessions exempts the thief from liability. Okay? Meaning, the owner was aware that it was stolen either by witnessing the theft himself, by doing an initial stock take and seeing the animal or the money was missing, or a third party said that they didn't want to cost the robber or the thief to jeopardize their own lives, but that one of his animals had been stolen. Okay? And according to Rav Chisda, if it was stolen with his awareness, counting of his possessions exempts the thief from liability. So as long as he does stock take and the money or sheep appears, that's the extent of the thief's obligation of return, legally. However, and this is where it's going to get tricky, if it was stolen without the owner's awareness, its return requires awareness. So you can already see that Rav Chisda has got the opposite approach to Rav. Why? Rav said, if the owner wasn't aware, the thief doesn't have to make him aware. If the owner was aware, the thief has to make him aware of its return. Rav Chisda is saying the opposite, is that if the owner is aware, he doesn't have to be made aware that the animal is returned. The stock take will suffice. But if the owner was not aware, its return requires awareness. The opposite. The thief must tell the owner that the article has been returned. Okay? Now that seems counterintuitive to logic. Okay? Because it's not a measure for measure approach. And we're going to see why it makes sense. Now, according to this approach, when the Mishnah states, and he counted the sheep and found that it was complete, the thief is exempt. It refers to the first clause when the owner is aware. So who explains Rav Chisda's position? Rava. So Rava turns around and says, listen, there's a very good reason for Rav Chisda. A stolen animal requires extra protection. Why? Because since the thief got the animal into the habit of taking steps outside, there has to be this extra protection. What's this taking of steps outside? So I'll explain it to you in very, very plain English. If an animal has been separated from the flock, the stolen animal, do you know what they say? They've got the saying with sheep to say, don't be a sheep, don't follow the crowd. You know this expression. Sheep are habitual animals, and generally you've got border collies that are used to herd sheep. I watch a lot of these like farming programs like Dr. Paul, who's a vet on DSTV or whatever. And border collies are used to round up sheep, and sheep follow other sheep. And border collies snap at the sheep to make the sheep a little scared. So sheep, when they work with other sheep, follow them. So if an animal has been separated from the flock, the stolen animal is more likely than the others to wander off on its own. So as such, it requires a greater degree of safeguarding than before. So if the owner was unaware of the theft and the sheep is returned without his knowledge, it would not suffice for him merely to count his flock. And even if he does count it and find it complete, he will not know that the sheep was ever stolen. And therefore, guys, he will consequently fail to provide it the extra protection it now requires because it's been habituated from separation with the rest of the flock. So since the thief has now made the animal less habitual and less secure than it was before the theft, because it's likely to wander off, he hasn't returned it in an adequate manner. So according to Rav Chisda, the only option, if the owner is unaware, is to explicitly inform the owner of the animal's return. Maybe the thief is scared. He can make an anonymous phone call. Or he could say, listen, your thief has your sheep has got a green tag on the foot. That was the animal that I stole. I feel bad. You have to be extra vigilant with this animal to ensure that it's got a greater degree of supervision and security and it's not going to wander off. And therefore, making the owner aware when the owner was unaware will make sure the owner gives it that protection in order to habituate it back in the flock. But if the owner did a stock take and is aware of the animal's departure, when the animal returns in terms of the stock take, the owner is going to be aware to be extra vigilant of this animal because he was aware during the stock take that an animal went missing anyway. So therefore, that made him aware of the theft. He didn't have to view the theft or hear it from a third party. Do you get what I'm saying? So Rav Chisda says if the owner is unaware, you have to make him aware because of this separation of the sheep from the other sheep. But if the owner was aware by doing stock take, you don't have to make him aware of the return. It suffices that he does the stock take and make sure that all the animals have returned, and then he's going to do a greater degree of vigilance and watchfulness and safeguarding. My question to this is, okay, that's great, but how do you know which animal, if it's returned and there's no notification, is the one that's got habitually used to separating from the others? That was my question to this Gemara.
Well, the one that escapes.
Well, Gavin, that's great after the thing. As the saying goes, you're bolting the stable door after the horse leaves. So that's great. But
well, I'm accurate. It might be useless, but I'm accurate.
No. Listen, you're 100% right. But my view is that if you have to have that vigilance now with every animal, that one of them is going to go rogue, it really is exhausting. So I think in order for the thief to really fulfill his obligation, I would put a tag around the animal's foot. and say, listen, I did wrong. This is the animal you need to watch out for. And have it maybe just extra guarded, as opposed to generally knowing that the stock has been returned and you have to look after 300 animals with extra vigilance and supervision. This is not just my humble opinion.
No, I agree with you. Surely after a while of being back, like if you put a rope on it or something initially, after let's say a few months or 6 months, it gets used to back to its old domain again, and then maybe it won't run away. Maybe, I don't know.
No, so Gavin, you're completely correct. I remember a story even with a cat that when I was at the Kaplan's, I went to my dad and Mams and Toti, and I closed my window, and the cat would sleep outside. I had a chair outside my cottage every night waiting for me to come home, because it used to go in the cottage. It had with what to go at the Kaplan family. But eventually, when I came home, and they ignore you at first to show you they're ticked off, and then they're happy to see you. But when I went when I went back in the cottage, this cat still slept outside on that chair, and I kept trying to coax it in, and it didn't come in. Eventually it did, or whatever, when it started getting a little colder, but it forgot the reason why it started sleeping outside in the first place, which I found fascinating. It was waiting for me to come home, but eventually after a month when I was in Toti and didn't come home, the cat got used to it, and that was the new place it slept. And when I came home, the reason for staying outside waiting for me to come home no longer applied, because I was home. It used to come in the cottage and spend time with me, and it would spend time with me and then go outside and sleep on the chair. So it became fascinating that when a mammalian brain is not fully developed, it forgets the reason and the rationale for which it originally slept outside was to see when I'd come home, and it became the habitual place for sleeping. Eventually it came inside. So animals don't have the same temporal lobe development or frontal lobe. Frontal lobe is for future planning and development. Just one thing to note, by the way, the Gemara says that maybe there's an internal contradiction in the teachings of Rava, because Rava explained Rav Chisda, and it said that Rava really say this, because Rava ruled elsewhere in the case of a man who saw his fellow lift a sheep from his flock with the intent to steal it, and the owner yelled at the thief, who then threw it down in a panic, but the owner didn't know whether he returned the animal or whether he did not return it. He just saw the thief run away and the animal was dropped, and subsequently it died or was stolen. The thief is responsible for it. So we're saying, hang on a second, but now the owner's aware, and he did drop it off, but why if he returned it, is there still responsibility if it got stolen by another party or it subsequently died? Now it says, doesn't this ruling of Rava contradict the previous ruling of explaining Rav Chisda for the extra vigilance, even when the animal died or was stolen after the owner counted the flock and found it complete? So the Gemara says when the thief dropped the animal, the owner couldn't see whether it was returned to the flock. However, upon counting the flock later, he found it to be complete. So following the count, okay, so the animal was returned. The thief ducked. He didn't want to be caught. The animal died through either natural causes or whatever, or some brain hemorrhage from being dropped or something, or was stolen again. Since Rava stated his ruling in a very general manner, he apparently holds in this other brisa that the thief is liable even in this case, according to the Rashba. So he agrees with Rav's view that where the owner is aware of the theft, the return of the stolen article requires his notification, and counting is insufficient. Okay, because so if so, Rava seems to disagree with Rav Chisda, who maintains that counting is adequate at the point where the owner knows that the thief stole the animal. So it seems to contradict this ruling. So the Gemara says, listen, there's no contradiction. This ruling applies only where the owner did not count the flock. In other words, if he would have counted the flock, the owner, the thief would then cease to be responsible for the stolen animal, because at the point of stock take, he was aware that the animal returned. So Rava's view is consistent with Rav Chisda's opinion that when the owner was aware of the theft due to the original stock take, counting the animal now to know that it's been returned exempts the thief from liability. But if there was no original stock take, there has to be, according to Rava, It's opinion of Rav Chisda, an awareness of the owner so that there could be extra supervision and vigilance. So it's not a contradiction. It's just saying elsewhere when Rav is talking about, he's saying it's a case where once the thief returns the animal, at the point where the stock take is done and the thief is recovered, the animal is recovered, if after it's been returned, it dies afterwards, not from the impact of being dropped, but through natural causes or a wolf that's consumed it, or it disappears again and the owner's aware, the thief has fulfilled its responsibility of returning it. There's no contradiction. If somebody else stole it, it's fine. All right, now, the thief now addresses Rav's ruling that if the owner, now we're going back to Rav. Now remember Rav said, if the owner, Rav said, if the article was stolen with the owner's awareness, its return requires the owner's awareness. The thief must tell the owner where the article is and that it's been returned. If the item was stolen without the owner's awareness, counting of his possessions, whether it's an article or money, exempts the thief from liability. So what we are saying is this last part is the Gemara is now looking at Rav and analyzing him. It says that if the owner was aware of the theft, the thief must notify the owner of the item's return. And if the owner never became aware of the theft, his counting of the stock take suffices. So it's saying, well, did Rav really say that in our Mishnah? Because Rav said elsewhere, if the thief returned the stolen lamb to the owner's flock in the desert, for example, he's fulfilled his obligation. And we're saying, but why? Because in that case, there was neither notification nor counting. Meaning, if he's got a farm in the desert area, the owner doesn't live in the desert. He's got a shepherd that does the counting, and the owner wasn't aware. So it seems to contradict Rav elsewhere that when there's the owner's awareness, awareness is needed for the owner for rectification. If the owner was unaware, stock taking suffices in terms of rectification that the animal returns. And the Gemara answers, Rav Hanan bar Abba said, Rav agrees that in the case of a spotted lamb, an animal that is distinguishing marks, for example, neither notification or counting is required. So, all he's saying is it's not a contradiction. Rav makes a very different case of an exemption that if an animal looks different and completely distinct from any of the other animals, you don't need to do a stock take. If every animal is white and this one is spotted, you know it's back. You don't have to make the owner aware. The owner's aware. The owner's aware it was missing. The spotted sheep is back and the rest of the white sheep are there is aware. So any distinguishing mark that creates an awareness which doesn't need stock take is awareness in and of itself. In a case where one sheep looks like the next, if it was stolen without the owner's awareness, then a stock take suffices to remedy it, because when he checks, all animals are there, or all the money has been returned. Okay, there's no issue. If the owner becomes aware, then an awareness is required in order to spiritually and legally rectify it, according to Rav, and therefore a stock take is not sufficient. You have to actually notify him. Okay, according to Rav. Okay. So in other words, if the article was stolen with the owner's awareness, its return requires awareness. The thief must tell the owner that the article has been returned. If it's stolen without the owner's awareness, his counting of his possessions after the article has been returned exempts the thief from liability because it's self-corrective. Okay, so we are saying, well, what's the reason that you've got to let the owner know that the animal has been returned if the stock take will remedy it? Because measure for measure. It's a spiritual rectification and legal rectification. Non-awareness, no notification. Awareness, notification. Distinction of animal, there's awareness automatically. Okay, good, guys. We're ending 9 minutes early. I think you could do with an early night. We'll go through the Tanaic dispute next time.
Yeah, I actually thank you for that. I actually picked it up much better afterwards. Not perfect because I'm not feeling great, but I did pick up. I said it at the end of the day. Well, I picked it all up. Just can't give it my rap, but I can give you a sub. But not today.
yeah.
I'll give it to you tomorrow, Monday.
Damon,
And Damon,
Yeah,
I'll give you
Kev,
better.
hang
Damon,
on.
about the cat
can you
story.
go back like 10 minutes? There's such noise.
Absolutely, I can give you
It's like a
in
free
4
summary.
sentences a summary of where they're each holding. I'm absolutely happy
Yeah.
with it. Okay, tell me when
Noisy
you're
and I
ready. Ready? Arthur, what was the cat
Thank
thing?
you.
Let me just wait for him to get off the bus. Can it wait?
About
Arthur,
the cat thing, about the cat being outside learning. I know when I'm sleeping outside what I've done. So there's a difference.
Yeah,
See, I'm married.
yeah. That's called the dog box. That's not the cat box. All right.
But I know what I've done. I haven't.
All right. Kev, tell me when.
It's noisy.
It's quite noisy.
No,
Tell
it's going to be a
tell
half an
me-
hour. No.
Okay.
Gotta do it now. No.
Do you want me to repeat the 4 opinions very quickly in a sentence of each? Guys, it's not the end of the world if I do. Okay. There are 4 Amoraic rulings, what constitutes the proper return of a stolen article, which exempts the thief from paying for any harm it might subsequently suffer. So in other words, what's happening is the thief feels bad. He doesn't want to be sued. If the animal is returned in this particular manner, any harm that might befall the animal after the fact of its return is not the thief's spiritual or legal responsibility. These are the way that the Mishnah's interpreted by 4 different Amoraic opinions. According to Rav, R-A-V, if the article was stolen with the owner's awareness, either through the fact that the owner viewed the thief or the robber but was too scared to accost him, in case the thief or robber would attack him, there's awareness. If he does stock take and see the animal is missing, or a shepherd does stock take, sees that the animal money is missing, there's awareness. If a third party that says you had a theft and a break-in last night, but we didn't want to accost the thief in case he would retaliate, there's awareness. If the article was stolen with the owner's awareness, its return requires the awareness of the owner. In other words, the thief must tell the owner that the article has been returned. If it was stolen without the owner's awareness, the stock take counting of his possessions after the article has been returned exempts the thief from liability. Okay? That's very straightforward. Now, Shmuel has got a dissenting view, and Shmuel said whether the article was stolen with the owner's awareness or whether he was unaware, his counting of the possessions exempts the thief from liability, because as long as the person counts their money, does a stock take of the sheep afterwards and all is in order, this is a full return both legally and spiritually. And according to this approach, when the Mishnah states, and he counted the flock and found that it was complete, the thief is exempt, it refers to the entire Mishnah, as long as there was stock take and it's all rectified. Now, the third opinion is Rav Yochanan, who said if the article was stolen with the owner's awareness, his counting of his possessions exempts the thief from liability. In other words, according to Rav Yochanan, if the owner is aware, as long as it gets rectified when he does stock take, it's good enough. And if it was stolen without his awareness, so Kevin, the owner doesn't know his sheep or money's been stolen. He doesn't even have to do a stock take. Well, according to Rav Yochanan, it's legally and spiritually suffices if you just return what you stole. You don't even have to inform the person. Okay? Obviously, according to this approach, when the Mishnah states and he counted the flock and found that it was complete, the thief is exempt, it refers to the first clause when the owner was aware. But if the owner is not aware, he doesn't even have to do stock take, because if you don't know something's missing, you're not going to get stressed if it's missing. Now, Rav Kista is the one that is contradicting Rav, because Rav said if you're aware as the owner, the thief has to make you aware of the return. If you're not aware as the owner, stock take suffices. Now, Rav Kista is saying the opposite. He says if the owner's aware, his counting of his possessions exempts the thief from liability. Just being aware means that it can be rectified by the animal's return and sufficient stock take of the sheep. But if the owner is unaware, you've got to make the person aware. Now, why is this? Is quite simply because if the person wasn't aware that there was a theft and they do stock take, okay, the animal's been returned and he's aware nothing's missing, but he doesn't know to be extra careful and vigilant in safeguarding the animals, because this sheep has now developed a habit of separating from the herd and is liable to wander off. And therefore, the owner has to be aware when he was not aware, in order to be extra careful and safeguard his animals. Okay? And that's what we're dealing with. And that's it, guys. Cool.
Thanks.